on both sides, there's lots of different things that, and they just add up. They add up a little bit, right? First day it's this, next thing you know, you throw that in there too. There's resolution, but it wasn't really revolution. Every time you look over and you see that darn bag of grapes sitting out or whatever it is, you're like, oh man, it takes you back to the moment.
Fact.
And I mean, it then eventually something silly comes up, and then that's when it all pours out. And then now you're regretting what you said, you're regretting how you said it, and it goes into the nasty box, and it's a lot harder to empty the nasty box than it is the nice box.
Yeah, as you were saying, I heard you use the word resolution, and I could only hear the word revolution. I'm like, okay, listen, if you don't get this resolved, if you don't handle this resolution, it's going to turn into a revolution. Like, it's going to be some fighting happening up in this
I
mud.
like that.
Hello, everybody. This is Brittney and Byron, and you're listening to Dirty Laundry with B&B, a podcast about real, relatable relationships.
Transparency at its finest. We air it out and clear it up, offering couples and those seeking healthy relationships a safe, inclusive space to open the vents and find resolve.
Hello, Dirty Laundry listeners.
What's up,
we
people?
are excited to talk today about some realness.
Yeah, man. So our last episode, if y'all tuned in, it was a little solemn, and I think we're going to continue in that trend. I think we've had a lot of listeners that talk about, hey, we want to know the real, like what else is going on in different types of relationship. And as you all know, our platform is about real, relatable relationships, and we would be remiss if we did not talk about some of the relationships that don't necessarily work out the way we would like them to.
Yeah, and I think there's so many pieces and parts to a relationship that can include being a father, going through a divorce, many things like that, and these struggles that people deal with. And that's why we're here. That's why it's Dirty Laundry.
Yeah, so our guest today reached out and said, hey, I would really like to share my story. And so we have a gentleman by the name of Calvin McHenry on the line today to talk about some of the hardships that he's been through and some of the relationships that he has had. And you all are about to learn so much from this man. So thank you so much, Calvin, and welcome to the show. We appreciate you.
Oh, I was going to say thank you guys for having me. I'm a fan of your show. I'm a fan of you too as people, and so it's great to join your podcast, and appreciate it.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
Well, if you listen to our show, one of our favorite questions to ask you is, what is your love story? What are your thoughts on love, your feeling? What have you learned about love? Anything you want to share about your personal journey thus far?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, going through a divorce and, in the process of a second one, it's a little bit probably not your typical answer you get, when it comes to, what's your love story. I can just tell you that, my love stories probably start off like most, you find, you meet somebody, they're attractive, you're attracted to them. And, everything seems to be good. So, I think my love story, definitely through the honeymoon period was the same as, I probably, a big chunk of people. But, there's another side of it as well, too. And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I love the fact that you had talked about that kind of infatuation stage. And we had talked about in one of our episodes about the 4 phases of love. And that first phase being the lust phase, where you're attracted, like you talked about, to that person. And so, like, in your experience, how did that lust phase intrigue you, or how did that connect you into that relationship that you had?
Well, I think that there's tons of different seasons in life, that people go through. And I think that love phase kind of, it depends on what season you're in. If you're coming out of a bad relationship, or, you've been lonely for a while, I think that it can, that love phase and that lust phase can be different. There's different things you're looking for. And so a lot of times we think at first that it's just, the fact of, oh man, this person's attractive, but usually it's something there that you're, lacking, or that you're missing, that, you're trying to get as well too. And so, in addition to the lust part, some part of their conversation or some part of them, you want that part and to kind of being part of, who you are as well too. And so, I think that just as quick as we can get infatuated with how somebody looks, you can get infatuated to what they have that they're at least appearing to bring to the table, especially if you're lacking in that area or you've been neglected in that area for, a long time. And this goes back to childhood. So that's kind of my opinion on, my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do you think that your childhood shaped kind of, your relationships and how, kind of that missing piece that you needed in those relationships that you had?
Yeah, I think it does for a lot of people. I think that, for me, for example, and, you guys are, a little bit more aware of my story and everything. If you kind of go where you feel like you've been abandoned or that you dealt with abandonment, you might tend to be more cautious and have more anxiety of somebody leaving you if you don't perform to a certain standard. So, that goes back to childhood. There's some people who have been validated every single day from their family or their parents. And they gotten used to that validation. And without that validation, they really don't know if they're doing it right, if they're doing it wrong, if people think they're doing a good job or not. And so, some people due to childhood, they're used to that validation that maybe somebody is not prepared or does not know that that's something that they need. And so, I think a lot of things, just through my spiritual journey, my therapeutic journey, I think that a lot of who we are is based off our childhood and a lot of different things that we look for, and that and how we react and, what works and doesn't work and our perspective of what's working and what isn't working. I think a lot of it, can go back to your childhood. I mean, I'd probably be betting, 85% of it,
I have a question for you, Calvin. So you're saying that a lot of it, could be like abandonment. I don't know if you're speaking for yourself specifically because you said people, but was there something when you were in that, dating phase that you recognized now looking back, like maybe that's the reason why I felt the need to have that person in my life? Like, do you think moving forward, you can recognize those changes and like make that change? And I don't want to say that in a blaming way because I don't believe that a divorce is one person's fault. So I'm just saying because we're talking to you.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, that's why we're here, right? Transparency,
right.
So, if I wanted to be about somebody else, I'd have them here with me. So,
Right.
So yeah, I think in both of my marriages, looking back on them, and what point I was at in my life when I met them. And for example, my first marriage, I probably for the first time in a long time kind of had my heart broken. I was kind of used to kind of, being the one that called the shots, I had a nice career going. I was young, pretty educated, at the point in time, then didn't have any kids, and so I'm sitting there at 26 years old, like, man, I got it going on. Like I'm a hot, I'm a hot commodity here, I ended up dating somebody who didn't feel the same way all the way. And then that heartbreak there kind of led it to where the next thing I was looking for, I was just looking for somebody who's just going to love me, and at least be willing to commit all in. And so what happened with that is I ended up jumping into a relationship pretty quick, ended up getting married after a year, knowing, my first wife. And it looking back on it, I was looking for something and I wanted so much validation from something that didn't work and something that I felt like I deserved more out of. Whereas now I'm, as soon as I felt like I saw it, here I am, man, I love this person, man, this is, and so, my second one, I was going through my first divorce, swore off women for quite a bit, and it was during COVID. So, the divorce lasted, a couple years longer than what a normal divorce would. I was at a point where I wanted to eventually get to marriage again, but I didn't know the pathway to get there and what really needed to be done. And all the work that, I missed on the first one, I didn't really give myself that time to be able to recognize and, look up. I say, looking up under the hood, like you're checking your car. I didn't check to see if I had an oil leak.
Yeah.
I didn't check to see, if I needed new brakes or anything like that. And so here I am back in the same, situation. Although now, for example, I was lacking. One of the things that I liked in my first marriage was just that person who was optimistic. And despite whatever happened, that optimistic person, like, hey, it's all going to be good. Yeah. And then this, my second wife, she comes along and guess what? She's super optimistic. I remember the first time taking her back to the airport, we're sitting there, we're having a gospel session in the car, and I'm like, oh man, Jesus sent this one, and I mean, really just celebrating some of the things that I hadn't celebrated in a long time. And, next thing you know, kid on the way, marriage comes, a couple years, after we met. And once again, I'm back in it, going through a second divorce here and trying to pick up the pieces and understand, what things I need to work on, A lot of time people want to blame, and for me, I'm like, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah. And so, just really trying to, now navigate through, from my perspective, failing, as men, I remember you saying the other day, Byron, how, you're a fixer, and so that toll whenever you're a fixer and you're trying to fix something that ain't going to be able to be fixed, it takes a lot of toll on you.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Absolutely does. And that's a great point. I think, man, you shared so much there. I would imagine that leaving the first marriage, it not working. But before I get into that point, I want to say thank you for taking ownership, because you had talked about how people want to blame, how easy it would be for you to start pointing fingers right now, but you're taking ownership of things that you feel like you need to work on. And I mean, that just earns itself an applause. But I can only imagine leaving one relationship and going into the next, you having a feeling of a bit of trepidation, I don't know what this is going to look like. And you're kind of tiptoeing into it. The first marriage, I would imagine you're excited to, walk her through the threshold of the house, jump the broom, y'all throwing rice at each other, still in the house 3 weeks later. What are we doing? Right. And then the second one is oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? Do you think that the first relationship, it not working out, the first marriage not working out, affected your second marriage at all?
I mean, there was lots of collateral damage, as I'd like to say. I had a child in my first marriage, so logistics, that played a role in it. She had 2 children from a previous marriage as well, too. And so, that plays a role into it. So the collateral damage, of court fees, travel to go, get your visitation time in, attorney's fees, all sorts of other things, I mean, the mental toll, a lot of that there carries over, and even though that marriage might be over, there can be a lot of legal, things that you still have to work through, where if that next partner's there, they're kind of part of it then, and so it bleeds over, and it's a lot easier to bleed over whenever you have children involved.
Yeah,
definitely. And I know this is a little bit not off subject, but I was told once before that you marry the first time for love, the second time for money or something missing, and the third time for companionship. So it kind of sounds like we're in line. I mean, that's the saying,
Yeah, everything sounds pretty much on right there, except for the third time.
Yeah, I just had to share that because you were talking about the different things, and that's a saying. So
yeah,
and that's funny because I play pickleball, and so a lot of my pickleball community, is older people, 50 and older, and a couple of them have got married this year, and I definitely see where that third one, as far as companionship, it seems to be the leading determination, after you've kind of went through it a couple times, that companionship, because you realize, things go, money comes and goes, but that true partnership and companionship, you can't put a value on it and the peace that it brings to your life. And, so I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And Calvin, I know I'm kind of shifting a bit, but you are a dad, you have, children. How is that piece playing into this, process with them, and how are you handling that, and how are you preparing them? I mean, how does that affect you in your household,
Anytime you're dealing with divorce, there's a dynamic, it's a lot easier for 2 people to work together. Listeners, please listen, drop your pride, work together for the kids, instead of saying, my baby daddy or my ex-husband, that's the father of my children. I think that, that there, when you think about it, you want the best for your children. So when you say that's the mother of my children or the father of my children, you should want the best for them, just like you'd want the best for your friends' parents, And so that there, if you go into it, that it can work out a lot easier. But if there's friction up in there, I tell you right now, in family courts, it's nothing but a business. That's all it is. It's a business. The more they billing out hours as far as the attorneys, the more they'll keep it going. And they'll keep it going no matter what. All it takes is one party not to be willing to play together, on the playground, or one party to feel like they're entitled more, or one party is to be dealing with more hurt, and so that let's get past it and, move forward. And so if you go and you look it up, I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of dollars tied up in family court. And, as soon as they put that person on child support, well, the courts get paid a piece of that as well, too.
Right. And
so, the family court system is not set up for a peaceful resolution. And so it just it's made it hell to a certain extent. But the key is, is that, for somebody who didn't grow up with a present father, it makes it where, I know that by me showing up and me fighting for as much time as I can get with them, that there's going to speak volumes as they get older. And, you just got to sometimes, go through the process and go through it. I say it all the time, your peace and your worthiness and you feeling and knowing that you're loved, there's no price on it, and so, there's going to be collateral damage. And unfortunately, a lot of times it is the children that suffer. But the key that I've made a big part of my life is stay involved, stay active, fight for them, let them know that you want to be in their lives. And sometimes, them just seeing that and seeing you show up at every chance you get, it goes a long way into adulthood. It can help a lot.
Man, that is amazing. And it just made me think about just doing reading on divorces and, how much it's been impacting the United States. Like families are changing, and you talked about that dynamic. Like it's no longer the norm that you have a 2-parent household. Like it's a 50-50, right? But I mean, now divorce rates are 40 to 50%. And then 85% of those single parent homes are the mother. So that's why I feel like this conversation is so tremendous, because we get to hear from your perspective as the father fighting for, some of that control of of the parental rights, right? Just being a father. And you said it sometimes, I grew up, not having my father there. And that's not to say that he did not want to be there, but just the fact is that he was not there. And so for me, that is a huge driving force for me to want to be something for my boys. And
I think you remember that. You're saying, Calvin, you are going to show up every single chance it affected you, you want to, at least when you grow up, say, I knew that you were fighting. I know that you were there. I know that you were trying. And so I think that your children will recognize that, but sometimes it just takes us a little longer to recognize the faults in our parents, and they realize we're human just as much as they are.
Absolutely.
There becomes this little gap, between your 20s and 30s, I think, where you're everything is your parents' fault. But then you realize oh my goodness, they have flaws too. They're working through life just like we are. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So, you've already talked about some of the challenges that you have faced, especially now, trying to battle for your children. And I'll tell you what, I was afraid that all these electronics and all this stuff was about to cut off because you're talking about family court not being a good thing. I know somebody's listening about to cut this shit down right now.
Pull the plug.
But it's such a great point. Just fantastic information that hopefully our listeners will learn from. But man, just such valid points. But I want to ask, so we had talked about the lust phase, and then after the lust phase comes the observation phase, right? So now I'm learning a little bit more about my partner, and I'm learning the little quirks, and they like to sleep with the light on, and they like to do laundry on Sundays. And so I'm still learning, even though we dated for X amount of time before we got married, I'm still learning my partner, right? So at what point did you learn that, okay, maybe this is a little bit different than what I expected or what I experienced in the lust phase?
Oh man. I'll tell you, it happens after marriage and it happens after children. I think that those two are some of the two most toughest times for a marriage. When you're dating, you guys, hey, I'm leaving. You pack up and move. With the marriage, you got to go through the court system. You got to do different things. And that's if you guys, have no shared assets. You guys don't have children. You can move through, a lot quicker. But once you throw in some of those other elements, it's just, the dynamic of it just becomes, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so, for me, after the marriage phase, just certain things, just kind of change, and they're subtle. One big thing that I realized, and it took place in both, in both marriages, was the ability to forgive and the timeliness to forgive. I'm not going to make a general statement, but in my two marriages, both of them seemed like it just, it's something that should be able to be resolved and get over with. As time kind of went on, they drew themselves out longer, and the person stayed madder longer, and other things like that. And so that there was probably in both marriages, that was one of the, okay, the first time you see that somebody's not willing to fight for the marriage or fight for the peace of it, I think that's kind of when the the alarm bells kind of start tinkering in a little bit.
Right.
But do you also feel like it's not about, like you're saying, people like your exes like got upset longer? Do you think that it's not about, like they say, it's not about the spilled milk? It wasn't about that. Was there small things that it was really a big thing? Because a lot of times it's not about the one thing. It's about not feeling validated, not feeling heard, not feeling respected, not feeling loved. It's something of that sort usually at that higher level that's missing. And all those little things just seem to be turned into that.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And most of the times, when you look back on it, one of our, my second marriage, one of our biggest tiffs we had was over a lamp getting knocked over.
It's not about the lamp.
And I mean, this thing caused, a lot of, a lamp,
Right.
And the thing is that the lamp got broken. Our interior designer, once we told her, she had a new lamp already there, like a couple days later. Yet this thing, it was a monumental point, and so I totally agree with you. A lot of times, in my opinion, what it is, for a male, we need that respect part. And so once that respect part starts going down, we kind of start giving up, and start kind of, and for women, you all, for not everyone, but the love part, you love me, you hear me,
Right.
And some of those things means a lot, and so once those things kind of start, those are some basic needs that you think, you're like, oh man, that sounds easy. And it's hard and it's easy to forget about it, especially when you have a busy life going and you got kids going, and everything else. It's important to say, man, am I respecting him? I know that that's something big to him. Am I validating him? And am I showing her that I love her? Am I taking time to listen to her about her day? Or am I just rushing her through it and doing this right here while she's talking about it? There's, on both sides, there's lots of different things that, and they just add up. They add up a little bit, right? First day it's this, next thing you throw that in there too. There's resolution, but it wasn't really revolution. Every time you look over and you see that darn bag of grapes sitting out or whatever it is, you're like, oh man, it takes you back to that moment. And then eventually something silly comes up, and then that's when it all pours out. And then now you're regretting what you said, you're regretting how you said it, and it goes into the nasty box, and it's a lot harder to empty the nasty box than it is the nice box.
Yeah. As you were saying, I heard you use the word resolution, and I could only hear the word revolution. I'm like, okay, listen, if you don't get this resolved, if you don't handle this resolution, it's going to turn into a revolution. Like, it's going to be some fighting happening up in this mug.
I like that.
It's going to be some fighting up in this mug.
Hey, that's true though. That's totally true. I think you hit it on there pretty well. That's what ends up happening.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, have you ever heard people say like the way you talk to your children in public is the way you should talk to your children at home? Like you wouldn't scream at them necessarily and be extra as you would at home. The same rule applies sometimes in your house with your spouse too. Like I wouldn't maybe be disrespectful to you in public, so you shouldn't be disrespectful in your house. Same kind of rule. And so I think we just forget common courtesy sometimes because their life is happening and we just expect. There just becomes this expectation. And we've talked about expectations so many times. And that's where we almost always fail each other in relationships because there's this expectation and no one talked about it. We just kept on going. Everyone's pissed off because everyone expected something. And here we are. Now we don't even know how we got here, And so with that being said, Calvin, I know you mentioned therapy. Did you guys do any marriage therapy or marriage counseling? Did you do it individually? Did you do it together? Did you feel like it helped?
I've tried marriage counseling and I don't think that in either marriage I had a lot of success with it. Also, I think that there was different dynamics that played into it that kind of affected it. And I think that overall, I've got a lot of friends that have done marriage counseling, and overall, I think that I think that it's a good step to take, but it can also make things worse or not really fix things as well, too. And especially if you get a therapist that ends up kind of leaning towards one person's side, then that trust is gone for the other person, and there's a lot of elements to where, there's a lot of elements to find the proper marriage counseling that's going to be able to work. Yeah. Do you go with a Christian marriage counselor? Do you not? Do you go with a woman? Do you go with a male? Do you go, there's just a lot of different things. And I don't know what the numbers are, but, I think that marriage counseling probably has about the same success rate as a marriage, 50%, and so I've tried that. I've really have focused on the individual therapy, especially these last, 3 years. I'm not sure it's the right way. I think that there's some selfishness to it, but at the same time, I've gotten to a point where I knew that I need to fix me to be able to be good for anyone else. And I need to work on the things that I was struggling with, and those issues that I had that I need to work with. The family and everybody is suffering enough where I can't afford not to deal with those. I can't afford to put those on the back burner and try to just skip right over me and go into me and what in this marriage there. And so, I've had several kind of, I guess you'd say, kind of wake up calls where it's like, no, get back to you, and really try to work on you. Especially, if you've had a traumatic childhood or, you've dealt with, different, mental health things, due to childhood and growing up and even life beyond that, and so I've kind of went more in with the individual counseling route, but like I said, I definitely could have put more effort in on the marriage counseling route too to push for it. So it's kind of can't really say which way is the best.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's a therapist, and it's great to have a third party to kind of help you see things with hopefully unfeathered lenses, right? Or untarnished lenses, if you will, someone that is a mediator and that's sitting in the middle. So I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, they are human, right? So their advice to you, although they might be educated, might be a bit subjective based on their experiences and what they have seen. So totally understand and agree with you there, because you never know, what you're going to get. But like you said, it could be a good first step. But just like anything else. And also, I want to hit another point too. You had talked about how you shouldn't treat somebody at home, the way that you should treat people the same that you treat them out in public. Well, some people be treating people like super disrespectfully out in public, but we don't get there.
Okay, well, that's not
We won't see that.
That's not shots. I'm just saying. But I would say it's probably a level of comfort too, right? Because we say this before. It's like, when I'm at home, you'll see the best of me, but you'll also see the worst of me too. So it just takes me to be present and make sure that I understand what's coming out of my mouth and when. It's just a hard thing to do, especially when you've been with someone for quite a while, and someone that you trust, and you're trying to be open and honest with them, like to be overly cautious with some of the words that you have. But man, you're right in that, like, I should respect you more than I respect anyone in this world. Right. And so that's just that's a focus point of mine, but I fail often.
Yeah. But Calvin, when you were saying that, I was thinking about Byron and I some years ago did the love languages book, and we worked through the whole book and read it. And Byron's love language is touch. And I don't know if something happens when women have children to where we just are always taking care of the kids and we kind of forget our husbands. And so when he told me that, I had to legitimately tell myself, okay, Brittney, every 2 hours, you're going to go hug him, but you're going to try to not make it a noticeable. But I would have to legitimately remember, do not forget to tell him you love him, walk by at least 3 times, Brittney, because it took and I would still forget. I would be just cleaning the kitchen, doing things. And it takes so much effort, even though I know I love you. I know I care about you. These things are just happening. I'm you can wait. Everything else has to be taken care of. Yeah. And what an unfair thing for me to think of, but that's just an example.
But it took a lot out of you. And same for me too.
Yeah.
Because typically we want to love people or treat people how they want to be treated. But how we want to be treated, but you should be treating and loving people how they want to be treated or how they want to be loved. And so that requires a conversation, but then also it requires a lot of energy from you.
Yeah. And mine's active service. So Byron's doing a lot of things around the house all the time.
Sweeping and my day was crazy.
We see that. And it's looking good, by the way. Man, you're doing a good job.
Man.
Putting them to work.
And I think that a lot of times, as men, we're taught this bravado. Right. And when you say that touch is one of your love languages, that almost comes across where some people interpret that as soft a little bit, but I can tell you, one of my love languages is touch too. And I think that a lot of men, whether they got that from their mothers or they didn't get that from their mothers, it means a lot to them. Just even if it's just that, rub an arm like, babe, you doing okay, and one of the things that does happen, and it once again, there's no fault, it's life. Yeah. When there are kids involved, like you just said, Brittney, how, you prioritize things, and next thing you know, he's at the end of the list and, he's going to be okay. And then for us, we sometimes don't voice it soon enough.
Right.
We kind of just get to the point where, hey, this is, this is how it is, and you go to bed without, even hugging her. You go to bed, now you're on your side turned around already, and, I experienced that a lot, and, you tend to, I've gotten a lot of, I don't want to be touched right now, or I don't, and you gotta, for me, I realize, and it still hurts to hear that, especially often. But at the same time, though, by the time a mother gets done doing her day with children, I mean, can you blame them?
Right.
And so, the key is how are you empathetic? How am I able to be empathetic through that when I still have needs too? And that's one of the things that I was not able to figure out in either marriage. That's one of the things that I think that, and I just now thinking about it, there's been tons of times that, how do we as men handle that resentment that we're feeling? And then how do we continue to reciprocate things that we know or think are important to our spouse's love language whenever we're not getting it?
And I also think that goes back to the house, like your childhood, and not to bring it back, but a lot of times what you see in your household, if you see a father that's helping and can teach you those things, no one teaches you. You're learning it, at the seat of your pants. You're we're just in it and we're rolling. I don't know what's going to work, and I don't, know it's not. And so there's also a piece of that just unknown. No one there to give you that advice for, both of you. Yeah. No one, you didn't have anyone, and including myself. I didn't have a father that gave me a great example of what they were really supposed to do. So it's not like I couldn't even help in that sense either. And so it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but like you're saying, we can work on ourselves and make ourselves better so that in the future, we can be that person that our partner needs us to be.
Yeah. And I just wish that I, would have done a better job of recognizing the needs that I had.
Yeah.
And sharing those early, and setting that foundation, early, because if somebody doesn't know, or if they don't know what you're dealing with mental health wise or anything else, okay, I'm doing individual therapy, but am I coming home and am I sharing that? Am I allowing my significant other, my spouse, to come with me to a therapy session, just different things like that, where if somebody's not allowed in, or if it's not there, it's kind of hard to expect that they're just going to be able to do it, and so I one thing I would say to people out there and they're listening around now and they're dating, figure out what those things are that really mean a lot to you, and be open and vocal about it, and set that bar, from the beginning. Don't wait until, you're, 2 years in and, you then recognize it.
That's so good. And so before you went into therapy, there was a moment that you knew that you needed either individual therapy or marriage counseling. What was that moment? And then before you got to the point where you felt like you need to go outside of the house to get that counseling or therapy, how did you try to cope? Was there any way that you try to cope through those challenges?
Well, unfortunately, when you deal with, a rough childhood, and, you got different mental health issues that you maybe haven't tackled as much as I should have. A lot of times what people end up turning to is alcohol and or drugs. And so for me, alcohol became my coping mechanism.
Yeah. Take your time.
Yeah. So alcohol became my coping mechanism because as these different feelings came back up that I had felt when I was a child, it's tough to kind of address those things. I mean, I've been to therapy for, a year and a half in therapy, and, my therapist was trying to get certain things out of my childhood that I couldn't process through them. The trauma of it, where it's been buried at, it was so far back there that, I spent a year and a half trying to, leaving there a lot of times frustrated because I'm like, I'm trying to answer the question, what else do you want?
Right.
Like, I'm giving you all I got, and I left there, for a while, really feeling like I wasn't accomplishing anything, or I wasn't, being a good, I don't want to call it student, but like trying to really put in my all during those sessions, and so, you kind of leave there with that. But yeah, I mean, the coping with the alcohol, I've found that a lot of people, they have that issue, and it can be something as simple as, man, dang, kid's about to get off the bus. Let me have a glass of wine real quick, and different things like that. And so a lot of people, because number one, if you think about it, I remember sitting in I did a intensive outpatient therapy program, and I'm sitting in there, and I remember, and I'm sitting there with like 8 other people. And a lot of them, I mean, compared to what I had going on, mine looked like preschool issues. Yeah. And I remember sitting there, I'm like, this person just got out of prison. The husband just got put up in there, heroin, this, that. And I remember for about 10 minutes in there, as I'm listening to people share their stories, and I'm like, man, this might not be for me. Like, man, they got some real stuff. And then something clicked in me and said, Calvin, you're no better than they are. You just, by the grace of God, it was alcohol with you. By the grace of God, this is what it was. And then after that, I poured everything I could into it, But I say all that because one of the people up in there that was her drug of choice was I can't remember what it was. Her drug of choice was like cocaine and something else. And she looked at me and she says, I feel sorry for you. And I said, what do you mean you feel sorry for me? She says, well, for me, I got to go here to go, find this illegal drug. I got to go here. For you, alcohol is everywhere. You turn around the corner on the bus, there's the alcohol. You look at TV, you watch movies, it's everywhere. And so she's like, I feel like it's harder for you guys because it's everywhere and it's easily accessible. You go out to dinner, it's right there. Yeah. You go to brunch, it's right there. You go to breakfast, there's a Bloody Mary. At that point in time, I really realized, like, it's going to be a battle, but at the end of the day, you got to go through certain things. Something sometimes has to die in you for something else to be reborn.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for sharing that. Firstly, I think, a lot of people are going to learn so much from that. Not only, that you can come out of that and it's a never ending battle, you're going to continue to challenge, but also a gaining of perspective, like an opportunity to think about the things that are going on in my life. And comparatively, I might not be going through things that are just as hard. However, I need to value or go through my own struggles and treat them as such with the amount of compassion that I would for anyone else. And so I do want to say thank you for sharing that, man. Thank you so much. It just shows so much strength of you for sure. And I'll tell you what, your children are going to see that and you're going to be a better man for it. That's the absolute truth. So with that being said, like alcohol being your choice, did you feel like, or how did that affect your marriage?
Drastic effects. Drastic effects, number one, you're not, if there's issues or things that come up during that, your filters, for a lot of people, myself included, is gone. Yeah. So that whole entire thing of respectfully not agreeing or respectfully communicating, a lot of times that goes right out the window when alcohol is involved. I've come from a childhood where I heard a lot of, I don't know how to put it to you, just people not talking to each other in a respectful manner.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of screaming and yelling and things like that. And so the first thing that happens in that moment is that you revert right back to that. Yeah. Your filtering your ability to say, wait a minute, it goes out the window a little bit. And so next you're repeating the same things that you saw because that's what you saw and that's what you've seen your whole entire life. And so it really does affect your ability to manage a conflict. Yeah. I say that, if I'd say for me personally in my marriages, it's been devastating. It's been devastating, not just for, my spouses, but also for myself too, and it's something that, once again, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and you got to say, okay, like, why was this? What did, where did this come from? Why did you handle this situation the way you handled it? What other tools can you use later on down the road to handle these things differently? And when you start really doing that self-diving, and it literally can be the most freeing thing in the world, but it's tough though, because the only way to get there is by putting in the work. There is no shortcuts for it. There is no excuses for it. You'll never be able to say, well, because I had this as a childhood, this is whatever. When you truly, truly get into it and you accept that, hey, I need help. Hey, I got some issues. I got some things I want to work on. In order to really get to that point, you got to have blinders on. You can't be looking at what this person did to you or what this person did to you or, all those different things. And it's a very humbling moment, to be able to do that. It takes it stings, to be the one that admits, to yourself that, man, I played a big role in blowing this thing, or I actually said that, or I actually did that,
Right.
And that's a lot to accept for a lot of people. I always say, if you had a camera on you on your worst day, would you be able to watch yourself?
Ooh.
And I've had a camera on me on my worst days, body cam footage. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Now, no arrest, but at the same time, though, having to sit there and watch it.
Can I just say how proud I am of you? Like, not just for sharing it, but proud of you as a father, as a person, and just proud of you for realizing like there's no stage in life that can stop you from being a better you. And like you taking ownership and accountability and being self-aware is so huge that you should definitely be proud of yourself about that piece. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's a work in progress, and it's, how do I put it? It doesn't matter how long it takes for you to accept it. The point is that you do. I had a buddy of mine the other day, he says, like in life, sometimes you just got to make decisions and be ready to pivot, and, for me, it's like, you can walk through the wrong door, but you don't have to stay in that room.
I love that.
And so, one big thing, is just realizing, hey, it's okay that I've walked through this door, but I don't have to stay there. I don't have to remain there. And, so that's the journey where, it's at.
Yeah.
So.
And you could continue to make excuses. You could make no changes. You could not break the generational curse, but like you're making a difference already. You can't probably see it, but you're already making those changes to make your family and your life a better life for them. And hopefully, you've caught it early enough that it's going to change that path. So just be proud of yourself.
Yeah, and another part too that gets missed on a lot, is the mental health aspect, and so a lot of people think when you say alcohol problem that it fits into one thing, like man, they're probably drinking all day long and every single day, and that doesn't, for me at least, that wasn't my case, and for me, it was a matter of it wasn't the the frequency and days, it was the context that I was choosing to drink alcohol under. The energy that I was choosing to drink alcohol under, and then the amount that I would drink while trying to cope. And so, although it might only been that one occurrence every few months, it's still, it takes its toll and, and things like that. And so there's different levels of it, and a lot of it too was, the mental health aspect of it, when you throw in, PTSD and, anxiety and depression and, some of those other things, that's, most times you don't realize it until it shows its ugly side, that you have those issues,
Yeah.
We're taught a lot, in the Black community a lot, toughen up and deal with it. You toughen up and deal with it. Your grandma made it through, your parents made it through, and so understanding that toughen up and dealing with it doesn't always work.
Right.
And so, I'm just glad I'm at the point where I'm able to just, hit it head on and accept, the mental health aspect, the alcohol aspect, the childhood aspect of it, and, really try to learn and grow and make sure tomorrow's better than today.
Yeah. Hey, well, trying is doing, and you are doing the dang thing, bro. So yeah, I want to echo Brittney's sentiments that, yeah, I'm extremely proud of you also. So we had talked about the lust phase and then the O, which is the observation stage, and then the variance, a lot of different changes happening. All right, how do I deal with this? And then we want to move over into the E. So like divorce, I think happens a lot, like when the relationships get tumultuous in the variability phase of love, right? A lot of different changes, things that we just can't get together. It sounds like you have some hope, Cal. So I want to know, like, from having experienced what you've experienced, how do you move into that enduring love phase, if you can?
Now, do you mean enduring love phase going forward?
Yes,
Like in future
moving forward,
relationships?
yeah.
Or do you mean like, well, I mean, moving forward, in future relationships, the key is that I've had to identify a couple things that are very important to me that I know are going to, have me in the best space to be the best version of myself that I can, be. I think that, when you start thinking about that, I think you said, is it enduring?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when you start thinking about that, you think about, okay, I'm laying a foundation on something that I want to be able to last for a long time, and so now, that the kids, I'm not planning on having any more kids, now that part's out of the way, you can really start to be like, okay, this is what this is going to look like. This is what that's going to look like. Now, where do I find that enduring partnership or that enduring, sometimes it might end up being by myself, but the enduring peace and the enduring, waking up and knowing that, I'm stepping out trying to be the best version of myself. That to me is, in addition to the enduring part with the relationship, kind of falling in love with myself and making sure that I'm giving myself that enduring love too, and that expectation, going forward. And then also that I'm paying attention to what other people need as far as that enduring love as well too. A lot of times, we just we get caught up in our own heads and what we think is the most important. And, I've been there myself, and so, and I love the word enduring, because that means you're going to go through the highs and the lows, but what you're doing is you're setting out on a journey and a vision that's something that can last longer. And I haven't conquered how to do it all the way, because otherwise I'd be married still. But unfortunately, I've had to learn from failure to get to this point. But everybody's path is different.
Yeah, but you're failing forward, man. Right. You're failing forward. And I love that analogy of just walking through a door. You don't have to stay there, and pivoting. It means you're still going somewhere. That doesn't mean you stop, right? Or you give up. You're just changing direction. You just change the sails of your ship. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I always say no fails, just feedback, okay?
That's
so we just decide how we're going to go with this, okay?
Man, I could have used that a long time ago.
All right, so we heard you earlier say that you wish you would have learned a little bit about what you needed and that you would have been able to be more vocal about what that was in your partnership. Is there anything else that you want to share, like something else that you would provide for our listeners who are dealing with challenges in their relationship or in their marriage?
I mean, just step outside of yourself. You're still in there and you're still fighting to try to make it work, or, you feel like it's at the end, you owe it to yourself to just try to just step outside of yourself, look at it through the other person's shoes. I think that it's both parties have to get to a point where they're like, you know what, it's both of us, and really commit to working on, finding out that vulnerable side of their partner, finding out what their partner really needs. Sometimes we don't even know how to put it in our own words to be able to express it to our partners, and if you can't even express it, how are they supposed to know what you need? And so just really trying to sometimes just simplify it down to just, let's just communicate on just some basic levels. Let's find some things that we can agree on. And let's, maybe start off with one person, starting with, hey, this is when I feel vulnerable, or this is when I feel this way right here, and trying to work through it. I just wish that I could have, been able to step outside myself many times for the sake of trying to make the marriage work. And I failed there, but at the same time, I'm still breathing. I'm still alive. I have great children, got great mothers, to my 3 boys. And, I'm going to thank God for that. And, just keep on trying to be the best version of myself as I can be. And I encourage everybody to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Calvin. I think it's really brave of you, and I'm sure there are people out there that have very similar stories. this is not our first episode necessarily on divorce. You know, we had someone talk about the aftermath, but not someone that's currently in it. And so it's really enlightening and it's inspirational to hear your story because it helps you know that like we can always continue to grow and be better. So thank you.
Yeah, there's always a sense of empowerment to just take ownership of some of the things that maybe we had gone through throughout our relationships. And you've done such a great job of articulating what those feelings, those emotions, those physical experiences that you have gone through look like and feel like in such an artistic way. So we just want to say thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you all for having me. I just really like what you all are doing. And, if you can, if you guys, this podcast here saves one marriage or helps one, or helps one person, you've done your job. And I got a feeling you guys are doing a lot for a lot of relationships and a lot of marriages. So thank you all as well.
Yes, thank
you. Thank you. That means so much.
Yes. So this has been a great episode. Definitely heartfelt and real. And I just appreciate it. So
yeah, it's just important to learn that, you can pivot, understand that it's not always about you. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation and kind of look at it from a strategic level, right? When you're looking at your relationship, it's not just about me. It's also about my partner. And then also if you walk into a door and it's not for you, sometimes you're going to walk out. And unfortunately and fortunately, that's just kind of where a society is right now. But man, there's so much to be learned from our relationships that we can carry on to new relationships. Just understand that, it's never... Just understand that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You can come out of almost anything. And I think Calvin did a phenomenal job of explaining and showing us that so much was learned on today.
I agree. And I also want to say, I do believe that there's no failure, right? We're all learning on this journey together. There are things, no marriage, no relationship is perfect. And so I just appreciate his vulnerability and sharing that story. And, sometimes it can probably feel very dark and alone. And that's what, people are really going through. And it's nice to hear that,
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all. Hey, another episode on trust, transparency, real, relatable relationships. That's what we're here for. If y'all want to hear more, please follow us, find us, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all of the platforms.
That's
Okay.
right.
We're just trying to push the word out there. But yeah, just hit us up at any moment. Without further ado, be blessed, be you, just be. We out.
I'm blessed to be me. I'm so blessed to be